I watched another man touch my wife while she giggled like a college intern on spring break. His hands slid over her back slowly, deliberately, and not a single person looked twice, except me, and even I didn't say a word, because I already knew what would happen if I did. She turned her head halfway, caught my expression, and said it loud enough for the people around us to hear. He just put sunscreen on my back. If you're that jealous, go home. Her tone wasn't defensive. It was mocking, dismissive, sharp enough to peel the skin off my pride in one stroke. Then came the laugh. Not a real one. No, that one she saved for strangers. This one was hollow, theatrical, a laugh with a message. Look how ridiculous my husband is. She laid her towel beside him like it was a natural thing, like she hadn't come here with me, like I was the one crashing someone else's weekend, and I stood there, married to a woman who just made me invisible. There's a point where a man stops feeling hurt and starts feeling done. That point doesn't usually arrive with fireworks or screaming. It arrives in silence and standing ankle deep in sand, watching your wife choose someone else in broad daylight, and acting like it's your fault for noticing. So I nodded. Once. No words. I turned and walked back to the hotel barefoot, shoes in hand, sunscreen untouched. Upstairs, our suite looked like it always did when she was in charge of packing. Her stuff scattered across every flat surface, mine zipped neatly in one corner. The imbalance of us was in everything. Her perfume clouded the room, her shoes blocked the doorway, her voice was always the loudest. I opened my suitcase. I didn't rage, I didn't cry, I just started folding. Shirts, pants, even the souvenir t-shirt she bought me yesterday as a passive-aggressive joke. It read Mr. Jealousy in neon print. Into the bottom of the bag it went. In 20 minutes, I had everything packed. In 30, I had the room canceled. By the 40-minute mark, I'd booked a red-eye out of the state. I left my key cards on the nightstand, pulled the curtains close so the room would be dim when she stumbled back, and placed a single note on the pillow. Flight changed, rooms clear, enjoy the rest of the trip. And then I turned off my phone, booked an Uber, and left like a ghost. No confrontation, no slammed doors, not even a goodbye. If you've read this far, you probably know someone who's lived this. Or maybe you've been him. Silent, patient, sidelined until one day you weren't. If you're part of the 97% listening who haven't subscribed yet, do it now. It tells our team this kind of story matters. And trust me, this one isn't over. The driver didn't speak much, which I appreciated. My flight wasn't for hours, but I didn't care. The airport was cleaner than the beach. No fake laughter, no audience to my humiliation. I sat at the gate with nothing but a carry-on in silence, watching her Instagram story pop up like clockwork. A boomerang of margaritas clinking, a bikini selfie with a caption that said, "Work hard, beach harder." And then, at 5:12 p.m., the one that sealed it, her leaning toward him at the tiki bar, smiling too widely, his hand hovering on her thigh. I didn't watch it twice. Instead, I opened a file I hadn't touched in months, an old draft of our prenup. I scrolled to the section titled Public Embarrassment. Clause 14. It had always felt like a joke, a leftover from my lawyer's paranoia, until now. The flight boarded, I buckled in, and I realized something strange. I wasn't angry, I wasn't heartbroken, I was level. Something had broken, yes, but not me. Something had opened, a door I hadn't noticed before, and I was walking through it quietly, deliberately, one state away at a time. She wouldn't scream until the morning. By then I'd be far too gone to hear it. The airport was nearly empty by the time I got there, that strange in-between hour when even the vending machines hum louder than the people. I didn't stop to eat, I didn't check social media, I didn't text anyone. I just walked to my gate with the kind of stillness that makes TSA glance twice, not nervous. Just finished. It was a quiet flight, midnight red-eye, mostly business types, and the occasional retiree heading home early. I didn't sleep, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't need to. There was a clarity that had settled into my chest like a slow breath. 10 years of guessing, doubting, swallowing it down. It was done. And for the first time in years, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I sent her one final message before I switched on airplane mode. Flight changed, rooms clear, enjoy the rest of the trip. I didn't wait for a reply. I blocked her number 5 seconds later, then deleted our shared travel calendar. One click, gone. Her conference schedules, dinner plans, our return flights, The spa reservation she claimed was for me time, but scheduled for 2. All gone. Scrubbed. Somewhere 2,000 miles away, she was sipping tequila out of a plastic pineapple and still thinking I was too passive to ever walk. I landed just after dawn. Cool air greeted me the second I stepped off the plane. An entirely different climate than the beach she was probably still passed out on. I rented a car, chose the most boring beige sedan on the lot, and drove to a small-town business hotel I used to stay in for work trips. No luxury, no frills, just privacy. Quiet, a clean table and a working lamp. I opened my laptop. There was no rage typing, no long manifesto about betrayal. I didn't even start with her. I started with me. New passwords, bank logins, cleared old authorizations. Ordered a replacement debit card to a P.O. box I hadn't used in 3 years. Called the bank and triggered a freeze on our joint account, citing unauthorized access risk. They flagged it immediately and escalated it for manual review. Then I logged into our prenup's digital copy and downloaded it, printed it at the hotel desk, read it line by line like it was a war manual. Clause 14, public degradation. Repeated incidents of public belittlement or humiliation, documented and verifiable, will trigger asset protection clauses shielding the injured party from equitable distribution obligations. I underlined verifiable. I had video. She didn't know it, but I'd started recording months ago. Not out of paranoia, but out of exhaustion. Little things. Dinner comments. Jokes she made at my expense in front of her friends. 2 years ago, I'd saved a clip of her mimicking me at a party while her coworkers laughed. I remember smiling through it. That file was still in my cloud. Now, it was Exhibit A. I made a list on paper, not digital. I didn't want anything traceable. Close joint accounts. Redirect mail. Safe deposit key at Dad's. Retrieve. Set meeting wow. Martin, lawyer. Contact property manager about trust. Name update. Schedule doc review, public acts, language. By 9 a.m., I'd made more progress than I had in the last 3 years of our marriage. And the best part, she didn't even know yet. She wouldn't check her phone until late morning. Once the brunch haze wore off and her phone stopped being a cocktail accessory, she'd see the message, see the block status. Go to the hotel, find the room empty, the front desk clerk apologetic but firm. He checked out last night, ma'am. Her first reaction wouldn't be panic. It would be disbelief. Because for a narcissist, abandonment doesn't register as real until someone else witnesses it. And right now, she was still the star of her own beach story, still laughing, still oblivious. Let her have it. Let her bask in the sunshine a little longer. I had already moved to the shadows, where real moves get made. She woke up with dry mouth and a pounding behind her eyes, the kind that comes from sugary liquor and too much sun. The hotel room was dim, curtains drawn halfway, her bikini still damp on the carpet, flip-flops kicked under the coffee table. For a second, she just lay there, stretching like nothing had changed. Then she noticed the silence. No suitcase by the wall, no phone charging by the outlet, no shoes, no keys, no scent of his aftershave lingering in the bathroom steam. She called out, half asleep. "Babe?" Nothing. She sat up, blinking, and finally saw it. The closet door swung wide open. Empty hangers, no neatly stacked shirts, no black travel bag, even the travel-sized bottle of cologne she always mocked him for packing, like you're starring in a James Bond movie. Gone. Confusion clicked into gear. She checked her phone. A single text, time-stamped 10 hours ago. Flight changed, rooms clear, enjoy the rest of the trip. She stared at it. For a second, she smirked. He's being dramatic. She tried calling. Straight to voicemail. She hit redial. Same thing. Then she swiped up to FaceTime. Blocked. That's when the room spun in a different way. She called his parents. No answer. His best friend? Sent her to voicemail on the first ring. She tried again. Nothing. She texted. Where is he? Why isn't anyone answering me? No reply. She jumped up, slipping on the slick tile floor as she ran barefoot to the door, throwing it open and marching down the hallway in an oversized t-shirt. At the front desk, she asked for him. The young clerk pulled up the reservation with a faintly nervous smile. Mr. Carter checked out last night around 11 p.m. She blinked. That's not possible. I'm sorry, ma'am. He said he was ending the reservation early and wouldn't be returning. Did he leave a message? He left the key cards and said you'd be staying behind. That was all. She walked back to the elevator in a daze. Back in the room, she stood in the middle, hands on hips, trying to piece it together. Her initial thought wasn't panic, it was damage control. Okay, he's sulking. Being dramatic, I can still fix this. She opened Instagram, shot a quick boomerang of herself sipping coffee by the balcony, filtered it to look more relaxed, captioned it, "Some people can't handle honesty." Posted, waited. That's when the comments started. The first, "You said that to him on your anniversary." Then, "Damn, cold." Another, "Didn't know sunscreen came with flirting rights." The tone wasn't supportive. It wasn't the usual heart emojis and Yas Queen reactions. It was judgmental, quietly condemning. Worse, amused. She scrolled through her story views. He hadn't seen them. Of course not. He'd blocked her. Blocked her. It didn't feel real yet, not until she refreshed their shared calendar app and found herself locked out, login error, unauthorized. Not until her card declined when she tried ordering room service. Try another payment method. Not until she noticed the small, absurd detail. His watch was gone from the nightstand drawer. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the now too large room, and the enormity of it began to settle in. He wasn't mad. He wasn't ghosting. He was gone. Not just from the hotel, but from the script, the usual fight silent treatment reconciliation loop. The pattern they always followed. He'd stepped out of it like it bored, like she was a rerun. No one watched anymore. She grabbed her phone, opened her group chat with two of her friends, typed, "You won't believe what Tom just did," then deleted it before sending. What could she even say? That she mocked him in public and he left? That she told him to go home, and he did? She tried calling his office, voicemail. She tried texting his sister, left on read. The last person she reached for was someone she hadn't spoken to in months, his former coworker, Adam. They were never close. But Adam had always respected him. She typed, "Do you know where Tom is? He left me alone here." No reply. She dropped the phone beside her and let out a noise, somewhere between a laugh and a groan. For the first time in their marriage, she was the one not being answered. And that silence? It screamed louder than any argument they'd ever had. At first, she assumed it was a tech glitch. The waiter hovered awkwardly beside her cabana chair, receipt in hand, smiling like it wasn't his fault the transaction had failed twice. She waved it off, half laughing. "Probably the Wi-Fi. I'll just Apple Pay." Declined again. Her fingers slowed. The sunlight suddenly felt a little too hot. She reached into her beach bag for the backup, her physical card, the one she and Tom shared for joint expenses. It was the same card she used for their hotel, dinners, flights, everything. Declined. The waiter cleared his throat. She offered another card, this one in her name only. Approved. She didn't thank him. She didn't say anything. Just signed the slip with a stiff wrist and sunglasses hiding the tremor behind her lashes. Back in the room, she opened her banking app. The shared account, gone. Or rather, listed, but showing zero access. A red banner at the top blinked. Access, temporarily restricted, contact support for further details. She called, waited, got rerouted, finally reached a woman with a kind voice and the politeness of someone who's read the notes and knows the storm they're stepping into. "Yes, ma'am, I see the issue. The joint account has been flagged and locked due to reported suspicious activity. The primary account holder triggered a security protocol." She blinked. "I'm a primary holder? Actually, your co-signer's request to elevate their status was approved last week. You were listed as secondary on all activity logs. It appears the account is being reviewed for fraud protections." Fraud? Her voice cracked with that blend of offense and dread. "I'm only permitted to discuss details with the current primary. You'll need to speak with him directly." She hung up mid-sentence. No one had ever made her feel small over the phone before. It wasn't supposed to work like that. Tom was the quiet one, the passive one, the guy who used to triple check if she was okay with the vacation budget before moving a cent. And now he'd locked her out like she was a threat to the brand. She dug into their shared files next. Dropbox, Google Drive, the folder titled Prenup Final. She remembered the fights back then, how she'd rolled her eyes at his lawyer's suggestions. Clause 14 sounds like something from a custody battle. She laughed it off, scribbled her signature, and never thought of it again. Until now. She opened the PDF. Page 9. Clause 4. In the event of repeated public humiliation or degradation by either party, the aggrieved spouse may invoke full spousal asset protection protocols. Public events include, but are not limited to, verbal belittlement, physical distancing with intent to shame, or intentional mockery before third parties. Her breath hitched. She scrolled further. If enacted following such an incident and documented with corroborating witness, the aggrieved spouse shall be entitled to protect their assets from division without obligation of alimony or compensation. And there it was, timed, stamped, signed by both. What hit her wasn't just that he'd remembered this clause. It was that he'd waited for the right moment to use it. He hadn't stormed out like a wounded man. He'd collected evidence, set a tripwire, then waited for her to walk right into it, on a beach, in front of people, with a laugh. If you're that jealous, go home. She thought it had been a flippant moment, a throwaway jab to shut down his usual sulking. But it wasn't a jab, it was a bullet. And he'd caught it, cataloged it, and turned it into leverage. This wasn't drama, this was architecture. Her indignation started to curdle into something else. The realization that this wasn't impulsive, that the man she thought she'd cornered had been building exits in silence. She hadn't lost him in one afternoon. She'd been losing him slowly, brick by brick, with every sarcastic remark, every dismissive wave of her hand when he tried to talk. And now, the walls around her were paper, and he was holding the match. She didn't cry yet. Crying would have made it real, and she wasn't there, not fully, not until she realized she was alone in the worst way possible, not physically, but socially. No hand to squeeze, no sympathetic, he's just being dramatic, no one telling her she was right, just silence. She started with Jamie, Tom's college roommate, now a father of two, always liked her more than his own girlfriend. Or so she'd assumed, call, voicemail, text, nothing. Then Lauren and Mike, the couple they vacationed with in Charleston last summer, the ones who always joked they'd get divorced first. Still nothing. She called Trish, her old coworker, the one who used to say, "Tom's so mellow, it's like you're married to a golden retriever." Trish had answered texts at 2 a.m. during her own breakup last year. Surely she'd pick up. Nope, call declined. She opened Instagram again, went to DMs, typed to Emma, "Where is everyone?" "Stop, okay. What's happening?" Before she could send it, another message popped in. From Peter. Peter never messaged her first. 3 words. "You crossed it." That was it. She stared at it like it was in another language. Crossed what? A line? A threshold? A point of no return? Then the screen shifted. FaceTime from her mother. She let it ring out. She already knew what that conversation would sound like, a syrupy "what did you do now?" followed by unsolicited advice about staying cute and keeping quiet. The sound of panic came in a different form. Questions. It started at work. She arrived late Monday morning in oversized sunglasses and a stiffness that didn't quite match her usual swagger. The receptionist gave her a polite, dry smile, the kind that said, "I've heard things." The first red flag was her access badge glitching. Security had to buzz her in manually. They joked about system updates. She didn't laugh. Then came the elevator ride. Her coworker Mark, usually a flirt, stood next to her and didn't say a word, not even the usual good morning. By noon, it was impossible to ignore. Her boss asked her to step into a private meeting. Small talk, awkward pauses, and then, "So, it's come to our attention that there's been some discussion around a recent personal trip. Someone forwarded us a receipt and a clip." She blinked. "Clip?" "Yes, a short video. It's audio mostly, of a comment you made." Her stomach dropped. They hadn't just forwarded the receipt. They'd recorded her own voice, sharp and unfiltered. "He just put sunscreen on my back. If you're that jealous, go home." She remembered laughing right after. The background noise, people shifting, awkward chuckles, the way Tom had gone quiet. It had felt like a win in the moment. Now it was evidence. "We're not making any formal statements at this time," her boss continued, "but as you know, your position represents the firm's values in public settings. We'd advise discretion." The meeting ended quickly. No eye contact, no smiles. Back at her desk, she opened her inbox. 3 unsubscribed calendar invites. A lunch she'd been removed from, A budget approval quietly reassigned. She tried to message her coworker, the man from the beach. Can we talk? No reply. She saw the status dot change from green to red. Offline. She scrolled his Instagram. His story was gone, deleted, or maybe hidden from her. Either way, the silence was no longer emotional. It was tactical. Her marriage had been the dam holding everything back, the buffer between her and consequence. The excuse for late arrivals, long lunches, public digs, and jokes that made others shift in their seats. Tom had been the one they all respected, tolerated her because of him, and now that he was gone, she was just exposed, not admired, not feared, just unprotected. And the world had noticed. The envelope was thick, official, and foreign, both in logo and tone. She found it waiting in her mailbox, nestled between a credit card promo and a postcard from her hairdresser reminding her she was due for a trim. The sender, L. Hayward and Associates, Family Law. She stared at it for a moment, standing in the hallway with her purse still dangling from one arm, keys in hand. Her first thought was that it couldn't be real. Tom had always used a local firm for legal matters. Why would he hire someone out of state? She carried it inside, hands slightly trembling. Didn't sit down. Just tore the seal and unfolded the top sheet. Notice of legal separation initiated. On behalf of Mr. Thomas Carter, we are formally notifying you that legal separation has been initiated, effective retroactively from the date of departure noted herein. Attached were pages, not copies, originals. He hadn't sent her drafts or a let's talk email, no gentle lead-in, just stamped documents in clear lines. Request for property neutrality during separation proceedings. Proposed inventory audit schedule. Notification of withdrawal from all joint decision-making frameworks. Emergency contact update, see below. She skimmed to the bottom of the first letter, heart pounding. One line stood out like a bloodstain. All future essential communication may be directed to P.O. Box 1897, Sanderville, WY 82934. She said it aloud before she even registered the absurdity. Wyoming? Tom hated the cold, hated the mountain air. He used to joke that anywhere without a sushi bar and a good barista wasn't fit for mammals. But now he had a box there. Not even a residence. A mailbox. He hadn't given her a phone number, no personal email, no physical address, just a rented steel box 3 states away. She sat down on the floor. Not the couch, not the chair, the floor, like her legs had been kicked out from under her. No one had ever sent her something that cold, not even exes, not job rejections, not even her father, who once mailed her a birthday card 6 months late with "Hope this still counts" scribbled in Sharpie. But this wasn't negligence, this was choreography. And the part that gutted her most wasn't the separation itself. It was the realization that she'd lost the chance to beg, to scream, to perform some dramatic airport rush apology, to cry into his shirt and promise to change. He hadn't left the door open. He hadn't even acknowledged there was a door. She texted him anyway, used an old thread from before he blocked her. Maybe he'd unblocked her by now. Maybe this was still salvageable. Tom, please, let's talk. I didn't mean for this to go so far. No response. She waited an hour. Please just tell me where you are. I'll come. We can fix this. I messed up, I know that. Still nothing. Her fingers hovered over the screen, then typed the most humiliating sentence she'd written in years. Are you with someone else already? She stared at the blinking cursor. Delivery failed. Blocked. Still. It was the still that crushed her, because it meant he hadn't paused, hadn't second-guessed, hadn't even cracked the door for a moment of temptation. He'd blocked her once and never looked back. She opened the paper packet again, searching for some scrap of sentiment, a post-it, a handwritten line, a final insult, anything. But there was nothing. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was administration. She looked around her apartment. Their apartment. The one where they picked out the rug together, where he'd hung the frame crooked and she'd never let him forget it. Now, every object felt like evidence in a trial she'd already lost. She dialed her own lawyer in a daze. Do you know this firm? She asked, snapping a photo of the letterhead. A pause. I do, the voice replied. They're precise, quiet. When they get involved, it usually means the other party isn't interested in reconciliation. She hung up, and that night, For the first time in her adult life, she sat alone on a couch in a dark apartment and admitted aloud, "He's gone. Not temporarily, not emotionally, but logistically. Gone in the way people vanish when they've planned their exit, not when they're chased out." She slammed the folder shut, as if the force of it could change what was printed inside. Clause 14. She'd read it twice already, but her attorney made her read it again, this time aloud, slowly, as if reciting a verdict in court. In the event of repeated public embarrassment or humiliation by either party, the injured party may invoke a protective clause waiving obligations to financial support, including but not limited to alimony, spousal maintenance, or asset redistribution, provided evidence of pattern and impact can be shown. Her voice cracked by the end. She dropped the paper. That clause was never serious, she muttered, more to herself than to the lawyer. But the lawyer, middle-aged, composed, the kind of man who had seen enough divorces to know when not to sugarcoat, just raised an eyebrow. Well, he took it seriously, and unfortunately, the court will too. She crossed her arms, leaning back like she was trying to distance herself from the air in the room. "So I mock him a little on vacation and now I'm destitute. That's ridiculous. We were married for 10 years. The attorney didn't flinch. "You mocked him in public, repeatedly, with documentation and witnesses. This wasn't about one vacation." She opened her mouth to argue and then stopped, because deep down she knew it was true. The beach was just the spark. The fire had started long before. There was the dinner party last winter where she joked in front of his boss that Tom's last promotion had taken 4 years and a miracle. Everyone laughed, except Tom. He'd smiled, but she saw the way his hand curled under the table. She'd told him to lighten up. Then there was the wedding they went to last spring. She'd called him Mr. Background during the speeches when someone asked why he wasn't in the photos. "Oh, Tom's just there to pay for things." She'd laughed. She remembered the flush in his face, the awkward murmur of the table. She brushed it off, said it was a joke. He didn't argue, he never argued, but he remembered. And now it wasn't just memories. It was structured, labeled, archived. Her attorney slid a printed spreadsheet toward her. "These are the entries he submitted. Incidents, dates, witnesses." The beach moment was just the final entry. She skimmed the list. Some were small, passing comments, little humiliations she hadn't thought twice about. But others, a video file, a dinner recording, screenshots from group chats, a photo from the beach, her towel beside another man's, Tom walking alone in the distance. She had laughed at that moment. Now it stared back at her like a tombstone. Her eyes locked on one entry. March 22nd, 22. Company retreat. Witnesses. 12, that was the night she'd imitated his snoring in front of half his colleagues. She'd used a napkin to mimic his sleeping face. They'd howled, he'd laughed too, but less than the others. He'd gone to bed early. She whispered it like a confession. "He knew I'd snap eventually." The lawyer nodded. "Yes, and he built the case accordingly." "Why wouldn't he say anything? Why not talk to me?" "He did," the lawyer replied, flat. "I've read his affidavit. He says he tried, and every time you told him he was too sensitive, that it was just a joke, you told him to man up." She swallowed hard. The humiliation wasn't coming from others anymore. It was folding in on itself, self-inflicted, cold, surgical. She tried to rally some heat. "So what now? He just walks away and I get nothing?" "He doesn't want revenge," the lawyer said. "He wants distance. That's why you haven't heard from him. That's why you got a P.O. box and not a confrontation. He's not trying to fight. He's trying to end it clean." "And that clause lets him do that?" "Unless you can prove duress or fabrication," he said, "which from what I've seen would be a stretch. He didn't just collect data, he structured it." She looked down at her hands. They weren't shaking. They were still, because something in her had gone very still too. Not just her finances, not just her marriage, her narrative, the version of herself that could talk her way out of anything. That woman was gone. And in her place sat someone else, cornered, quiet, with no punchline left. She pulled into the driveway like muscle memory had driven her, not intention. The tires crunched the same gravel he used to complain about every spring, promising he'd finally replace it with stone. The porch light was still on, sensor triggered, same potted fern by the steps, a little drier than before. For one heartbeat, it all looked untouched. But then she saw the mailbox. It no longer said Carter. The brass plate had been replaced with a plain adhesive label, 2 letters, not her initials. She stood there for a full minute before stepping out of the car, as if the air might shift the reality back into something she could recognize. It didn't. The front door didn't respond to her key. She tried again. Still nothing. She rang the bell. A woman answered. Not Tom. Not a neighbor. A stranger in a charcoal blazer. Polite but firm. Ms. Carter? She straightened. Yes, this is my house. The woman tilted her head, not unkindly. Actually, no, as of 12 days ago, this property is held by the Morning Bridge Irrevocable Trust, with exclusive management rights granted to Mr. Thomas Carter. I'm the property manager overseeing the transition. Her face went blank. You're joking. I'm not, the woman said softly. I was informed you might stop by. I've been authorized to let you collect your personal items from the garage. The interior's been rekeyed. I can escort you if needed. It hit her in waves. The house she had picked tile for, the one where she repainted the guest room 3 times before settling on linen gray, the kitchen with the spice rack Tom built after watching a YouTube tutorial, the bed they shared, the one she once said was too soft for confidence. None of it was hers. May I ask where he is? She said, her voice too thin. I'm sorry, I wasn't given a forwarding address, just the mailbox in Wyoming. Everything goes there now. The woman stepped aside, gesturing toward the garage. And so she walked, through the side gate, around the hydrangea bush she used to trim each May, past the wind chimes she always hated but never removed. The garage door was already open. Inside were 3 boxes taped, labeled in sharp handwriting. Clothes, closet-left books, bedside misc, bathroom drawer. It was surgical, exact, unemotional. She didn't cry, not here. She wouldn't give that to the woman watching from the driveway. She lifted the boxes one at a time into her trunk, each one lighter than expected, a lifetime's worth of space reduced to a few items you could carry without breaking a sweat. As she closed the trunk, the woman nodded once and turned to lock the garage. Wait, she said, almost pleading. Can I just sit? On the steps? A pause, then a nod. So she did. Not out of protest, not out of defiance. She sat because she didn't know what else to do. She sat because the emptiness inside was echoing, and maybe, just maybe, the porch would remember her better than he did. She watched the sun sink low, light change color on the roof, on the railing, on the bricks. A breeze picked up, stirred the leaves. Somewhere in the distance, someone mowed a lawn. Then footsteps. A neighbor, one of the older ones, lived 2 doors down. They used to wave in the mornings. His name was Frank, she thought. He walked by slowly, saw her sitting there, paused for a heartbeat, then nodded once politely, and kept walking. Didn't stop, didn't ask, just moved on. And somehow, that hurt more than the legal letter, more than the trust, more than the boxes in her trunk, because it meant the world had gotten the memo, even if she hadn't. This wasn't her place anymore. Not the house, not the street, not the man, not even the mailbox. Everything she had called home had been recategorized under a trust, and the one person she could have begged for a second chance was unreachable, uninterested, and unfazed. She sat there until the sky turned dark and the automatic porch light buzzed on again, flooding her in pale white light like a spotlight on the final act of a show she didn't realize was already over. It had been days since she left the porch, not literally, but in her mind she was still there, still on those steps, numb and sunburned, trying to rewind time with the same desperation you reserve for choking or drowning. Her apartment felt like a hotel now, temporary, anonymous, a half-unpacked suitcase by the wall, the fridge humming with nothing inside. She hadn't gone back to work. Couldn't. There were too many stares last time, too many polite smiles that felt sharp around the edges, so she called out sick, then didn't bother pretending anymore. She was sitting on the floor again. She did that a lot now, like she didn't trust chairs, scrolling through her old photos. Every few swipes, she paused on one, stared, then zoomed in. Not on herself, but on him. Always on him. In group photos, he was often looking at her. That was the worst part. No matter how many people were in the frame, Tom always seemed to be watching her, smiling gently, arm around her waist, waiting like a man who still believed this story had a happy ending. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. Same number. She answered, voice hoarse. Hello? A pause, then a voice she hadn't heard in months. Hey, it's Devin. She blinked. Devin? Tom's old friend, the one who always stayed neutral in their spats, who toasted both of them at the wedding. She hadn't even thought of him during all this. I didn't call to take sides, he said quickly. I just thought someone should explain a few things. You look like you're unraveling. She closed her eyes. Where is he? He doesn't want to be found. Please, Devin, I just need to talk to him. I know I messed up. I know I said things I can't unsay. But we were married 10 years. Yeah, he said, 10 years where you made him the punchline. That's not fair. It is, he cut in, voice still calm, because I was there. Not just at the beach, not just at the dinner parties. I was there the night you reenacted his proposal for laughs. You remember that? You mimed his knee wobbling and called the ring retail vanilla. Everyone laughed, even me, and he just stood there, smiling like it didn't cut him in half. She swallowed hard. Why didn't he say anything? He did, quietly, to a few of us, but we didn't push back. We thought it was just your dynamic, sarcasm, tough love. He exhaled. But that beach thing, that was the nail. In public, in front of strangers, and coworkers. He told me weeks ago, she's gonna make me disappear in my own marriage. I can feel it. Tears pricked her eyes. So that's it? He's done? He's not angry, Devin said. He's done. There's a difference. Silence hung between. She hated the word done. It wasn't loud or messy. It was final. Tell me where he is, she whispered. No, Devin, I'm not doing this for him, he said. I'm doing it for you. Because chasing someone who's already healed from you, that'll wreck you in a whole new way. She couldn't breathe. Her mouth moved, but nothing came out. He added, softer this time, you laughed at him. In front of people. Again, what did you think would happen? That word again. Again, not once, not twice, but a pattern. She opened her mouth, but Devin had already hung up. She sat there in silence. Phone still pressed to her ear, the line now dead. And for the first time, truly and utterly, she let go. Of the story she'd told herself, that he was being sensitive, that he would come back, that this was just one more fight in a long marriage full of them. She curled up on the floor, not in the theatrical way, not the kind where you expect someone to walk in and comfort you, but like someone who knows no one's coming. She cried then, not from sadness, but from realization. The cruelest part of it all wasn't that he was gone. It was that she had made leaving easy. It was almost poetic. The way he returned to her life without ever reaching out, no call, no message, no warning, just a photograph and a feed she wasn't supposed to see anymore. She'd made the mistake of checking her burner account, the one she created in college to stalk ex-friends and high school rivals, the account with no followers and no posts, just a search bar and bad decisions. She wasn't looking for him, not directly. She was just drifting, an insomnia scroll, tap, scroll, swipe, half-hearted, until she saw it, a mutual friend. Someone from their Charleston circle, the kind who posted motivational quotes one day, private jets the next. This time, it was a wide landscape shot, a wooden pier stretching into a lake at golden hour, 5 people standing at the edge smiling, arms around shoulders, wind catching the hem of someone's blazer. At first, she didn't notice. She skimmed past, until a tag caught her eye. At Daniel Carter. Her thumb froze. It was him. He wasn't in the center of the photo. He wasn't making a big show. Just off to the left, wearing a light gray button-down, sleeves rolled, posture relaxed, eyes slightly squinted from the sun, smiling. Not the guarded, diplomatic smile she remembered from company dinners. This was different, real, open. The caption read, grateful to have Daniel join the board, a calm, thoughtful presence, a man of clarity and integrity. She read it again. Join the board? She clicked the profile. A new firm, not flashy but well-funded, located in a city he'd once joked was too quiet for ambition. Apparently he'd changed his mind, or maybe he had ambition now, and no one dragging it into the punchline pile. She zoomed in, not even realizing it. His face had changed. Not drastically, But it was there, that slight shift in men who've dropped weight they didn't know they were carrying. The kind of peace that isn't loud, the kind that isn't performative. He looked unburdened. There was a time she used to dress him, choose his ties, critique his haircuts, tell him he needed to look more assertive if he wanted to be taken seriously. And here he was, smiling like someone who had finally stopped needing permission. She didn't comment, didn't like the post. She wasn't blocked, not on that account, but she knew better. Instead, she tapped the photo, saved it to her phone, then sat back on the couch and just stared. It was stupid, probably, but she whispered it anyway. He really left. Not physically, she'd known that already. Not financially, he'd made sure of that with precision. Not socially, that had crumbled around her faster than she could control. No, this was something else. He'd left mentally, emotionally, spiritually. He had rebuilt himself. Not from rage, not from pettiness, from silence. And the revenge, it wasn't a screaming match. It wasn't a lawsuit. It wasn't a social media takedown. It was this, a photograph she wasn't meant to see. A life she would never be part of again. His quiet victory, her permanent exclusion, and somewhere deep inside her chest something heavy settled, not like grief, not like heartbreak, like finality. Because when someone leaves with noise, there's always the chance of return. But when someone leaves quietly, they're already gone.